G'day. Now, anyone who's watched any of my videos, maybe they've got the idea that I'm a bit confrontational. Well, that's deliberate. Uh, Part of the job of a meditation teacher is to be confrontational, to challenge the other person. Now, what I've noticed in person-to-person conversation, that there's a time to stop being confrontational, and that's when you see the anger arising in the other person. And it's interesting when you see that anger, because you've got to ask yourself, well, why? Because by being confrontational, I don't mean being aggressive. I mean being assertive, stating things as I see them and waiting for the other person to respond likewise. But that's not what I've seen on many occasions. I've got plenty of examples of talking to very nice, very humble Buddhists, and we get along fine for the first few minutes until we start to get down to the details. And typically I will start raising the internal contradictions that exist in Buddhism. And the number of times I've seen a person turn into a volcano. Now, the question is why? And also, so what? Is it important? Well, to answer the second question first, yes, it is important. Self-delusion, it might seem a fairly innocuous thing, but it's not. Yes, we'll use an uncontroversial example and then work towards the present day. The Christian Crusades. Right? Now, that's well documented, and it's absolutely clear to any thinking person these days that they were huge crimes perpetrated by Christians, trying to recapture that lovely contentious place, Jerusalem, the Holy Land. And there was a wave after wave of murderous hordes slaughtering people because of their beliefs, essentially delusional. Now, my personal history, I grew up in Australia, nominally a Christian country, and I was something like 6 or 7 years old when this character Billy Graham turned up, and I went through my Christian phase. As a young kid, I was fed all these stories about Jesus walking on water and the loaves and fishes and the resurrection and the virgin birth and the whole kit and caboodle. Well, it took a little while to break free of that, and I can talk to people my age who haven't broken free of it. They're not, religious, but if I start, bagging Christianity, they go silent on me because they're still affected by what they were taught as children, and they've never broken out of that. Now, okay, that might seem a little bit innocuous, but we had the example coming now into present day nearly when we had this character George Bush launching his wars in the Middle East, George Bush Jr. And he was silly enough to call it a crusade, and he had to be corrected on that. He didn't seem to know the history, and but the Christian, the nominally Christian people who not religious, but they're still affected by these infantile stories. They don't put up a resistance against obvious crimes. The country goes to war, the soldiers fight, they join up or they're conscripted, and they fight, and they think they're doing the good thing because buried deep in their worldview is that they're the noble Christians. Now, same thing goes with Islam. Judaism, Buddhism, they've all got these really stupid stories that you get fed as a kid. And when you're an adult, or when you should be able to think for yourself, it's not actually an easy matter to break out, because you can justify it in all kinds of ways. Oh, well, I believe in miracles because look at the way the world is. I mean, how can you explain the universe? Clearly there's a creator, there's a God. Well, they're actually two different arguments. Yeah, there might be a God. I mean, I'm in no position to have an opinion on that. But if there was a God, that still doesn't mean that these stories are true. You know? So a lot of meditation is about a willingness to confront yourself and be honest with yourself. And so I look at, well, okay, what other reasons apart from our childhood upbringings? What other reasons are there that people don't confront themselves? Okay, now meditation's not an easy thing, and there's all kinds of propaganda about what it's about, which people believe, and I mean to tell you, most of it is completely untrue. It's wishful thinking. But people have a good go. Some people have a good go at meditation, and they don't really get very far. They don't get very far because they've got the wrong idea in the first place, so they don't really know what they're doing. They're sincere in their efforts, but you know, uh, just like any other skill, it helps to know how to hit the ball, or you know, uh, how to run or how to swim. There's sort of basic things. So if you've got the wrong idea, of course you don't get very far. Now, but some of these people are very aspirational, and they're decent people at heart, but they're also going to be severely deluded. That's what happens to us as kids. I mean, in our culture, Sesame Street, a lovely little show. There's no violence in it, but it gives kids a completely wrong idea about what they're going to be facing. So there's this aspirational factor, and I think people they kind of give up on their own abilities, and they'll sit at the foot of some guru who won't confront them, but will feed them a whole lot of aspirational twaddle. Meditation's about confronting yourself and being willing to confront yourself. A big part of it. Now, we all want a better world. Well, the world we get is what we make of it. And if you're willing to, let the bullshit slide, well, then you get a bullshit society. Pretty simple. It doesn't mean you have to be aggressive about it, but you've got to be willing to spot your own rubbish and not tolerate it. Now, on everybody's radar at the moment is the Gaza war, and it's horrific. We're seeing warfare on television, or conflict, modern conflict. That's not dignified as a war. But as shocking as it may be, it's standard. I mean, what do people think? We make these terrible weapons to do terrible things, and then we're shocked when we see how terrible the things are that they do. You can see on video these days on YouTube. There's flyovers of Bakhmut, the Ukraine war. That's a city that looks like Gaza now. It's been demolished with weapons. There was heavy fighting there. What's happening in Gaza is actually nothing special compared to what human beings have done. And they do it because they're deluded. So our self-delusions do have real world consequences. America dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, what's that? That's mass murder. 100,000 people snuffed out in an instant in Hiroshima. Um, that's not significantly different, is it? Qualitatively, it's terrible. But before that, there was carpet bombing of Europe, firebombing of Dresden, a deliberate act of mass murder. This is what happens in warfare. People go mad, and they do mad things. And yet, it's completely normal to see some elderly ex-serviceman or woman engaged in reparations, personal reparations. They get into social service because when they get older and they've outgrown the psychology that of their youth, they recognise what they've done and they regret it, and they spend the rest of their remaining years trying to make up for it, trying to do something to make the situation good. Well, it's the delusions of their psychology at the time that allow them to commit these terrible things. Now, delusion is not a benign thing. Um, for the most part, it doesn't have an effect, but there are times when it does, and when it does, the effect that it has is momentous. It changes our world. Um, we've got all these deluded individuals who have this immense self-belief founded upon fantasy. And the only cure for that is for each individual to break out of their own delusional states. And that's why if someone puts themselves forward as a meditation teacher, well, that's why they've got to be confrontational, because it's not just all, sweetness and light. This is reality we're dealing with, the good and the bad. So I'll see you later.